Hi everybody, this is Andy. I'm the prop chef here at Two Perspective Studio. I just wanted to give you a quick little video on how to replicate or make a dupe or whatever you want to call it of a Girl Scout Samoa cookie. They're pretty easy to make. I'll be using Model Magic clay. You can buy Model Magic at lots of different places. A lot of times you'll find them in 8-ounce pouches. You usually get 4 in a bucket. I like it best for making fake foods. I think it holds its texture well, it doesn't have much shrink, and when it dries it looks fairly realistic. So this is actually an 8-ounce package that I've been conditioning. Just before I clicked the go button, I decided to give this a little stretch and pull. You'll need to do this when you open the package for the first time. You'll need to condition your Model Magic clay quite a bit before you use it. You want to make sure that when you pull, it doesn't snap. I don't even know if I can make this do it now. Maybe. Sort of like that. When you first start trying to move it around, it'll be very stiff, like that. You don't want that to happen. You want to make sure you get more of like a taffy stretch. So if you have a nice surface, it doesn't stick to a whole lot. This is an air dry clay, but it's pretty easy to use. Kids can use this for sure. It is non-toxic. It doesn't make a mess on your hands. But when you pull it, you want to make sure that you get a nice like mozzarella cheese or taffy stretch to where it's not breaking. It'll be warm and it'll be pliable. That's when you know that it's ready to go. Just a little ditty on Model Magic. So it usually takes me between 5 and 10 minutes depending on the air temperature and humidity levels before I get going with it. But make sure that any unused portions, get a gallon storage bag or something that's airtight, like a storage container, anything like that to put your extra clay in so that it doesn't dry out. It's got a decent period where you can leave it, but don't leave it too long or it'll start to dry. So I divided my clay in half. And I'm going to sort of roll out a little bit of a log here. So the easiest way that I've found to make these, I don't use a mold for these Samoa cookies. I shape them by hand. It's pretty easy. If you want to get them all exactly uniform, I suggest you use a kitchen scale that has ounces and grams on it. I have one here. This is just the basic Amazon food scale. Just make sure that you're not using this for your crafts and your food. So I have mine set to pounds and ounces right now. So I'm just going to weigh my clay. It says 0.9, that's 0.7, 0.9, 0.9. Okay, so we've got 3 at 0.9. All 4 are at 0.9 ounces. So we have about the right amount of clay. So what we're going to do is take all 4 of these. We'll make 4 cookies real quick. This will not be a long video, I promise. This is one of the easier little creations to make. What I'm going to be using is some shredded candle wax. This is just a white candle. I got a little handheld cheese grater at the dollar store. I just took the candle and grated it finely and put it in a bag. Now Samoas typically are toasted coconut, which looks a little more like this. Has that tannish tint to it with a little bit of darker brown in there. I'm going to show you what I did to my wax to make that color. Super easy. All it takes is a little paint on a toothpick You run it around in your little bowl of shredded candle wax, and you can change it to any color you'd like. If you want to make pink shredded coconut for a holiday cake or a topping on something. If you want to make it darker chocolate, you just use a darker brown. This is just a light tan paint. I'll take a little bit on a toothpick, pop it in there, and then with a gloved hand, I just move it around to make that color disperse among the wax. Let it dry. It doesn't stick together. It stays nice as it is, but it makes that lovely toasted coconut color. If you want white coconut for a cake, just leave it white. So once I have all of these rolled out and I sort of push and roll in the middle of my palms to disperse the air out of the clay and to get the seams out. You don't want any seams showing. So once you have them all like that, what you're going to do is you're going to make a hole, because Samoas have a hole in the middle. So I'm just going to take my finger. You could use the end of a fat paintbrush. It works just the same. If you don't want to leave any finger nail marks or anything like that, just put a little hole in it, just like you're making a little donut. So then you're going to press this down just a little bit, make it look more like a cookie. You're going to flatten your sides down a little bit, because when cookies bake on a sheet, the dough sort of runs down and then bakes to the sheet. So you want to make sure that you're sort of pulling the sides of your cookie down. You don't want this hole to be very big. If you've ever eaten a Girl Scout Samoa like that, you know the hole is pretty small. And these may be a little bit bigger than the normal. I guess Girl Scout cookies have shrunk over the years a little bit. Or maybe I just got bigger, I'm not sure. But they're very tasty nonetheless. Always look forward to that season. So I have the top pressed down and my sides are elongated down to where it looks like it was baked. Now I know there's no color on here yet, but we'll take care of that in just a minute. I'm going to sort of flatten this one and do the same thing. Just run that around, make that hole, press down the sides, smooth them out, and try not to leave too many fingerprints. If you sort of use a smoothing motion rather than pressing in on it, you won't leave that many fingerprints. And then I just pick it up and sort of tuck the loose clay in on the back. And there is the second one. And like I said, because we've measured our clay, they're all going to be about the same size, which is a good thing if you're trying to make realistic cookies that you put out on a plate. You want them to look professional. If you're doing this in your kitchen and making cookies for real, you might not always get uniform cookies unless you're using a measured scoop for your cookie batter. My ring keeps hitting my tile. Alright, there's 3. And here's 4. Now see, this doesn't take much time to do. This is a quick and easy cookie craft. And you can definitely do this with kids. There's nothing in here that would be dangerous to do with a kid. All right, all 4 cookies are shaped. Now what we're going to do is give them a little paint. Just make sure, don't let your clay touch any other clay because it will stick together. So to give these a nice, nice golden baked look, we're going to do 2 different colors of paint. The first color is going to be a yellow ochre. That's O-C-H-R-E. You can find paints in your local craft store. Any light tannish yellow will work just fine for these. Samoas are a little bit on the caramely side. So I'm going to take a small flat paintbrush. I'm going to give it a little bit of water. I have a paper towel here. I don't want it soaking wet, but I want my brush damp. So I'll wipe off a little of that excess on a paper towel before I begin. And I just pick up some paint on both sides of the brush. I'll start with the underside. Now I don't want this to go on extremely thick. This is just a base coat, so I want it pretty thin, and it's just sort of a shading coat. When I get the bottom painted, I'll just set it down, and I'll do the other ones and let that dry a little bit, and then I'll flip it over and do the top side. And then what we'll do is go over it with a shading coat. We'll get it where it looks a little more baked. And that will be done with a slightly more brown paint. This one is more on the yellowish side, sort of like almost like a golden brown color, I guess. So it reminds me of wheat. Yellow ochre reminds me of the color of wheat, if that helps any. Now I didn't form these cookies to where they looked unnatural. I did it to where, I mean, no 2 cookies are alike when they bake, so no 2 cookies should be exactly alike when you're trying to do a replica. You want them all to be individualized. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the first one that I painted, and I'm going to paint this other side. Just very lightly. Like I said, this is just a base coat, just to give it a little bit of color underneath. You can always put the paint in your clay before you start and knead it in that way. And then you can skip this painting step because the clay will already be painted. Either way is fine, and I do it both ways. It's never the same twice with me. I have to keep it different and interesting. Get a little more water here. The brush will go across the clay, especially since it's still wet. This is wet clay, not dry clay. You can definitely wait until the cookies are dry. Give it 24 hours and then go in with your paint coat. It'll be easier to paint them. But either way is fine with something of this size. If you're doing something larger, definitely wait for your clay to dry before you put paint on it. It can lead to cracking if you don't, and you don't want to work hard on your creations just to have them crack. All right. So there is our painted base coat. Now I'm going to wash my brush, dry it off a little bit. Now the next color I'm going to use is a much richer brown. This is called a raw sienna. This is a professional paint color. It is a much deeper than the initial color. You can probably see the difference here. You will when I start spreading it out, the difference in the two browns. So I'm using the lighter for the base coat and then the darker for a shading coat. I think actually what I'm going to do with this, I'm not even going to brush on my shading coat. I'm going to use, make sure all the water is out of this. This is just a makeup sponge that I use for painting. You can see when I did this coat, see the brush strokes on there? If you don't want the brush strokes to show, try using a sponge, or this is the very non-porous makeup sponge. This one is extremely smooth, has very small pores in it. So it's really good for just pouncing a coat of paint on there, and you don't leave any brush strokes. It's very smooth, very quick. If you're handy with an airbrush gun, you can airbrush your cookies as well, and that way you'll have no brush strokes. But either way, you want to get that deep brown cooked look. And you want to make sure that you go and do the bottom as well. It's usually best to do the bottom first and then flip it over and do the top. Get a little more paint in here. I'm just going around and sort of pouncing that paint on there. I'm going to go back and make this one just a little bit darker. You can put as many coats as you want on these cookies. It's best to let them dry in between coats so that you're achieving the color that you want and you're not removing your base coat. It just takes a minute to do these. And like I said, if you want to skip the initial paint step, you can always put the initial paint color in your clay before you start. It's I would recommend weighing out your clay before you put the paint in it so that you don't paint too much of your clay and then you have maybe a paint color of clay that you don't want. So weigh it out before you put the paint in it. It also adds to the weight. Okay. Now I usually take these and just wash them in the sink really good, and then I let them dry. Get this off. So I would typically let these dry a little bit. I don't have my heat gun or hair dryer or anything plugged in. I probably should have saved that glove on because this is a little messy. I'm just stick another one on. So to get the coconut to stick on here, it's best to use something, either a clear glue or a Mod Podge. Either one works. Doesn't have to be a gloss Mod Podge. It can be either one, gloss or matte. Either one works just fine. I'm just going to dump some of this out on here. It's also best not to leave your Mod Podge containers open for long periods of time. Put it in a little dish or put it out on your parchment paper. It's the easiest way to get it on there. Oh, let's see. I have another flat paintbrush about that same size as the other one. And I'm just going to put some very gently because my paint is still a little damp. You can put it on fairly thick. It does dry clear. Or like I said, you can use a clear school glue. It's totally fine. It's about the same thing. And then take your toasted coconut that you colored with a little bit of, to color this, I used the raw sienna, just a dot, and just colored that coconut. Then you'll want to press it down pretty well onto that Mod Podge all the way around the sides. I'll usually sprinkle some on the sides and then just sort of, in an ideal world, this cookie would be dry while I was showing you this. But you just want to make sure that you get plenty of coconut up around the sides so that it looks just like the real cookie. And then I'll just put that, oh, I put that off camera. So I'll go on to the next. Just make sure that you get glue all the way down to the bottom on the sides so that your coconut sticks all the way around. You don't have to worry about putting coconut on the bottom of these. Typically these have chocolate on the bottom because they're sort of drizzled and dipped. I've never made them from scratch, so I can't actually say that I know the process, but I know what they look like when I've eaten them, and the bottom is full of chocolate, so I assume that they are dipped. Get this on this last cookie, and we put our coconut on. And then there's just one step to go, and we are done. Like I said, this is not a difficult project, and it's not a long project. Probably one of the quickest videos I've done. Okay. Oh, I keep putting that off camera. Okay, and the fourth one. There we go. Now I'm going to put some of this back in my dish here. I'm going to move these up just for a second, because I don't want to waste all this. I'm going to put that right back down in there. And I'll bring my cookies back so that you can see them. Now for the very last step, we need our chocolate drizzle. I'm just going to be using some slick paint, also called puff paint or dimensional paint. You can also find this in any craft store. Now Samoas have these stripes that go back and forth, so I'm just going to squeeze this on just like you would see on the actual cookie. I'm just going back and forth. Pretty easy. Now this is dimensional paint, so it won't sink. It will stay three-dimensional looking. In other words, it'll have a raised chocolate area on the cookie even when it's dry. It won't sink, in other words. I just want to make sure that there's no, when it goes down in the hole, I want it to go all the way down and not hold a line across it. And I want to make sure that I have plenty on there so that it looks good and realistic. All right, and that is about all you have to do to make these realistic replica Girl Scout Samoa cookies. If you have any questions, you can leave them down in the comments section. You can also tell me what your favorite cookie variety is, Girl Scout or otherwise. This is definitely my favorite Girl Scout cookie, but if you have one that you'd like to share with me, go ahead and drop it in the comments. Until the next video, this is Andy the Prop Chef saying thanks for joining, and I'll see you later.